You know, well, you can be whatever you want to be.
Be whatever you want to be.
You can be whatever you want to be.
That sounds like a Disney song.
If you're coming in late, that means I got to be nice because we're live.
You seen the T-shirts that say "Always be yourself, unless you can be a unicorn, then always be a unicorn"?
Yes.
Those are my favorite, man.
Charles has children.
That's right. Maggie, my daughter has a unicorn suit, and it's pretty funny to watch her run around in it. I actually want an adult-sized one, but I haven't found one yet. I think it would be hilarious.
Things I would not admit. That would be one of them.
You would not admit it. Do you sleep in a unicorn onesie?
Sorry, folks. The show's over early.
A little too close to home there, Ed.
That's right. I'm a closet corny.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. All right. Welcome back to Corona Geek, here where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we're joined with an excellent panel of good-spirited souls. We've got Dr. Brian Burton from burtonsmediagroup.com.
Hello.
Also joining us is Ed Marina from roaminggamer.com.
Hey.
We've got Mike Hempling from cravecreative.com and Stephen Johnson from ibalbastudios.com. All right. We are...
We're a happening crowd.
We're a happy crowd. We're just a happy crowd. Hey, I've got a few announcements that I want to make before we dive into today's show. One is that Corona Labs is looking for showcase candidates and case study candidates. So if you would like to have your app listed in the showcase, I highly recommend that you check the show notes. We'll have a link to a form that you can fill out there. Once you do, then we will take a look at your app and add it to the showcase. So it may look like a long form to you, but not all of the fields are required. But the more information you give us, the better off that we'll be. So same thing goes for case studies. The case study form is actually the one that's really seems very long, but because it's a case study, we need a lot of information from you to kind of have something to go on, and it also helps us to do follow-up questions. So if really to kind of dig out the meat of the story and get to the point of why what to talk about in the case study for your particular app. The other thing is that we're looking for podcast interview candidates. So again, check the link in the show notes. There'll be a link to the form so that you can become an interview candidate for Corona Geek. So what we're going to do there is that's going to be basically a 20-minute interview, basically a conversation. Interview sounds so informal and sounds so intimidating, but it's really just a conversation. We'll have for 20 minutes, talk about your app, talk about your experience. You just tell your developer story, basically. And then that will go out on the blog and social media and the newsletter and everything. So check the show notes for that. Also, we're looking for session suggestions and speaker candidates for CoronaCon. So we made an announcement in last week's newsletter. We're planning CoronaCon here in Austin, Texas. We're shooting for an October time frame, somewhere in the beginning to middle of October, and we're trying to collect session ideas and also get a list of potential speakers who would want to lead those sessions. So if that sounds like you, or if you have ideas, check the show notes, fill out the form. We would appreciate your feedback. There's also a form there for meetings. So if you want to meet with us at Mobile World Congress, which is coming up later this month in February, or if you want to meet up with us at GDC in San Francisco in March, fill out that form and we'll set aside some time to talk. It would be great to meet up with everyone at either one of these events. And there's a lot more events listed on that meeting form, so any one of those that we'll be at, we can schedule some time to talk. Lastly, we're looking for tvOS or Apple TV app submissions. So if you've ported your app from either a mobile, or maybe you've even created a desktop version and now you're porting it to tvOS, whatever the case, if you've published on tvOS, we want to hear your story. We want to talk about you, and so we're taking submissions for that. I actually have a a commitment lined up from a magazine who wants to do an article on porting from mobile to Apple TV. So submit your apps for review, and we'll be in touch. Also, later this week, there's going to come out a blog post. We're getting ready for a public release. We're gearing up for that. It includes Android 6 updates and permission changes, permission updates that go right along with Android 6. And so what we're going to be doing is putting out a blog post sort of highlighting some of the features that we would like you to look out for. So if you're using daily builds and basically using building for Android, there'll be some things that you'll want to take note of, and we would like your feedback. So if you run into a bug or you have questions or concerns about something, then we want to hear your feedback on those items. And that public release could possibly be out later this week or next or the week after that. It really just depends on how these updates go. There apparently Android 6 updates were a pretty large undertaking, and with the permission changes, it kind of touches plugins and other things as well. So we want to make sure that we get it right. Okay, the other thing that I have here is that if you guys weren't on the Corona Geek After Dark Hangout, or if you haven't seen that yet, haven't watched that yet, we had that last Wednesday. That was a lot of fun. Jason Schroeder was on. He talked about his Stripe plugin that he's working on. So if you haven't seen that, either check his YouTube channel, or you can check out the Corona Geek After Dark number 19, where he gave a demo of it. And then we also talked about CoronaCon, monetization, Apple TV controllers, and all that kind of stuff. So go check that out. And again, links will be in the show notes to everything, so don't worry. All right, let's see. What do we have on the panel? Does anybody have announcements or updates? I see there, Ed, you have Forever Lost up on the screen, which is fantastic. Thanks for that reminder there.
Yeah, I have announcements, but I was going to wait for the other guys to go first.
Well, while you have that on the screen, I just want to give a shout out to Glitch Games. They are actually taking their Forever Lost, the desktop edition of their game, and they're shooting for getting it up on Steam. So right now you can go and vote for them, vote yes for Greenlight, and help support them. They've been around for a long time. They've contributed code to the community, and they have some great games. So again, I'll put a link in the show notes, but go vote for them and support them.
All right, well, good. I was just wanted to remind remind folks to help greenlight them. So mission accomplished.
Yay!
Yeah. Whoops, wrong screen. Anybody else before I launch into my tirade?
Yeah, I've got a couple of topics that I want to briefly touch on. First of all, the CoronaCon that's coming up, as Charles mentioned, in October. That's pretty exciting. There are not a lot of programming-oriented conferences in the central United States. They tend to either be on the West Coast or the East Coast. Since GDC pulled out of Austin a couple of years ago, there's been a lack. And so to see CoronaCon coming on, this is a great opportunity and a possible potential replacement for GDC that used to happen in the Austin area. I'm planning on bringing a whole busload of students, university students, down to the conference, and also planning on speaking at the conference. So if you are interested at all, I encourage you to submit some potential topics for this project and contribute. Be part of it. And even if you don't want to be the speaker, contribute some ideas for things you'd like to see at the conference, so those of us that are more than happy to speak at the conference know what people are looking for. It's an exciting opportunity, and it's just a little over 6 months away.
Right. Yeah. I definitely I want to kind of piggyback on that for just a second and say this is it. I know a lot of people have said in the past, hey, it would be great if we had a CoronaCon.
This is something we've talked about for probably 5 years, that this would be something really neat, and I always thought it would happen in San Francisco. Nope, it's going to happen in Austin, which hotels are much cheaper in Austin than what they are in San Francisco, so that's a big bonus. lots of conferences happen in San Francisco. This is here in the central U.S. and much closer for many of us. It's a wonderful opportunity. So
yeah, and the weather's about the same.
Yes, yeah.
Close, pretty close.
In October, it'll be short sleeve weather most likely. So
yeah, right.
It'll be wonderful.
Yeah, and so if you have any ideas about what you think this thing should look like, this is your opportunity. Being quiet at this point will not benefit you or anyone else. So highly encourage feedback at this point.
Awesome. The second topic I wanted to bring up real quick was, I don't know if everybody's seen this or not. Last week during our hangout, the president announced that he would like to see an initiative go forward to bring computer science classes to K-12 education. Currently, this is very severely lacking in the United States. Great Britain did something very similar a couple of years ago. Actually, maybe it was just a year and a half ago. They instituted a huge push to bring computer programming into their primary schools and secondary schools. Now we're starting to see this here. There is a huge lack of computer training happening in secondary education and lower grades as well. Anybody who has done programming knows that if they started learning to program in high school, junior high, this isn't the case for everyone, but most of us had to teach ourselves. It was, if we were the high school computer geek, it was because we spent the time to learn the material on our own, and that gives you a huge leg up if you're planning on doing any kind of programming then in college. Getting those basics, understanding the basics of programming is essential. And the reason I mention this on our Corona Geek show, because we're all into geeking out about creating great mobile apps and great products. We're programmers. Whether you started from an art background, a music background, a programming background, whatever the case might be, we're all programmers. We're creating applications day in and day out, and we understand that the more background we can possibly have to get started, the better off we're going to be. So this is this has got to go to Congress and all that, but he's calling for a $4 billion, that's B, $billion initiative to bring computer science education into lower grades. That's exciting. Especially for me as a teacher, I think that's very exciting. We are already seeing Corona being adopted by many schools, colleges, universities across the country, and even abroad. We're seeing it, since I have a few textbooks, I see the textbook being adopted really in many places around the world. So this is a wonderful opportunity. If you know a school district, you know a teacher that's looking at taking advantage of this, tell them about Corona and that it's free for their classes. They can install it on all their computers without any problem, and there is curriculum to go along with it. Charles and I have spent a lot of hours discussing curriculum and development of how to teach programming, and this is a great opportunity. So those are my thoughts on it.
You know what completely floored me was that I just kind of assumed that this was already in motion, that schools already taught this because as you mentioned when we were growing up, there was at least I know that there was a computer class, and you had to sign up to get into that class, and space was limited, and not everybody got in. But I thought, once I moved on from public school, I thought, well, surely that's continued to grow and advance. And according to the article, that the link that you sent me, only 13% of schools, I think it was, actually have some form of program. Not to say that they're fully funded and have everything they need, but just that they have any form of program. And I thought it's eye-opening, right? Because you think that it's already in place, and then you realize that wait, right. What? How is that not the case?
It's a twofold problem. First of all, there are not enough teachers that know how to teach programming for the high school, junior high, and lower levels. And second of all, it's the funding for finding the teachers and paying for the teachers in the schools. So there's multiple problems. It's something that I'm trying to address personally, and it's exciting to see that there's other organizations also trying to address this problem. So if you know a teacher that would like to do this, have them send me an email. I'll be happy to work with them, get them up to speed, help them prepare for teaching a computer science class, and their students will be able to make mobile applications and get it into the place. Teaching at a university, I know that having a published app looks really good on that college reference list or that college application. It says, look what I've already accomplished. It doesn't have to be something sophisticated. Better than a FART app would be nice, but it would be not, just having something and having created something opens up the door for scholarships and other opportunities, and possibly even just simply paying for your own education through the apps that you've made. That's always an exciting thing. So again, I'm willing to help any teacher that is interested in doing this. If you know teachers, if you know school districts that would like to do this, we'll be happy to work with them, help them get more materials into their classroom.
Excellent.
I was just going to say, I must have been very lucky because I went to 2 different high schools, and both of my high schools had full-on computer labs. Like I went to Benicia High School, and they had a building dedicated to computer work with a fully networked computer lab, as good as what I had when I was in college. And then I later went to Tigard, and they had a smaller lab that wasn't as good, but at least they had something. So what it sounds like is unbelievable to me that there should still be high schools and junior high schools that don't have computers available for students to learn on, and computer training. Ugh.
Well, and one of the articles that I read stated that 22 states don't even count taking a computer science class toward meeting graduation requirements.
Well, that's just stupid.
So if nearly half the states in our country, it's not recognized as a class, that could be part of the computers.
I've got a cell phone. Why do I need a computer for? Notice how I went right into hick mode there.
Oh no.
Can't help myself. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it is a problem nationwide. I've worked with a lot of teachers in Texas, Oklahoma, New York, just California, where computer programming is recognized. And in Texas, computer programming is recognized as a foreign language. And if you've ever talked to a computer programmer, you'll recognize, yes, they are speaking a foreign language. It's confusing for a lot of people.
You know that they're speaking a foreign language.
That's right. Right. I noticed that some schools do treat that as a foreign language credit.
Yes.
They didn't have something else in their curriculum.
There was a huge push back in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, and then that kind of went away in the 90s and early 2000s for teaching computers in the classroom. Now we're seeing that starting to come back with the whole app economy that has really brought up to speed, and the prediction that there is going to be a huge shortage of programmers in the future. It's a problem that is growing. The projection is...
Well,
Go ahead.
The skills don't necessarily have to even be applied to an app, right? They can be making a macro on a spreadsheet. I mean, just the concepts of logical thinking and being able to automate something, that's more and more become a part of people's workplace responsibilities, and
Yes.
being able to full-on program is something that everybody should have a basic knowledge of how to do.
Yeah, just
at
for
the
improving your
university
brain.
where I'm teaching, we constantly have a shortage of programming students. We can always place more than what we are able to graduate each year.
All I've got to say is there's only going to be so many jobs at Burger King and Taco Bell. So, better get another job besides that. Think about programming instead.
And there's no fried grease
other
involved.
options, but
That's right. All right. Anybody else got anything?
I do have an announcement. But anybody else? Okay, I'm going to show my screen here. Now I'll get this out of the
All
way.
right, go ahead.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, so this should look familiar. Last year, I had released an updated version of the sampler that came with SSK. And as you can see from the date on this, the last time it got updated was 26 May 2015, so practically a year ago. Maybe not quite, but close enough. And I released this, and I was very proud of it and happy with it. But what I found is people just did not engage with it. They didn't understand it. They had trouble getting access to the code. And so I took it down. However, I have always been a proponent of tools, and I've seen more and more tools available for other game engines and SDKs, and I have been somewhat disappointed. Now, I will say that we do have tools. For example, even within the simulator, you have a rudimentary tool, and rudimentary sounds insulting, but what I mean to say is that there is a tool here for generating a basic template. Let me see if I can run it. Where you can select from a various small set of choices. You can change the configuration, you can change the orientation of your project, and then give it a name and put it someplace. So you've got something. And then if you're an OS X user, you have available to you the Composer visual editor for laying out your levels or whatever it may be. But that is not available for Windows programmers. So back to my tool here. So originally when I released SSK Sampler, what I was really trying to do was get people to use SSK and then find a way for me to get more content into people's hands. Long story short, didn't work, as I said, and I've come around to the plan, and now I'm starting to implement, is a new tool that will be sort of like a one-stop shopping center for generating starter apps. Well, it's focused on games primarily at this point, so starter games. What it will do is it will give you a number of different options for generating with or without Composer, full games, partial games, examples, and more importantly, it's going to give you access to configuring and setting up all of the things that people struggle with. And I'm going on a bit here, but over the past several years, I've answered the same questions over and over. For example, one question I answer all the time is, how do I set up ad mob and how do I display an ad? Or things like, how do I set up text fields and how do I get the keyboard to adjust? Or just random questions where we see these over and over. So I've got a backload of answers, and then I've got templates and tools, and I've been struggling all this time is how to get this into users' hands. So what I'm going to be giving people, not giving, selling, the monetization is still to be determined at this point. But what I'm looking for is I'm making an announcement now on the show and later on in the forums, and there'll be more details coming. But I'm trying to build up a list of people who would be willing to be alpha and then beta testers before I do the full release on this. So again, this is going to be sort of like, my plan is for a tool where you jump in, you run it on the desktop. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is all written in Corona. So in the future, in addition to whatever I put into it, people will be able to extend this tool either through downloading content from other users or writing their own add-ons to the tool. So my vision here is that we have a tool in the community that lets new users and intermediate users to advanced users all work and generate content as fast as they can, and also provide a way for people to extend this tool for those who say, hey, this is great, but it doesn't have some widget or feature that I would really like to have. And I'll tell them, great, go ahead, you can write it yourself. Here's the docs, go for it. So I will show you, that's it. That's all you get to see this week. That's as much as the teaser. I would show you more, but the interface for this is in flux because it's a fairly complicated concept, and so I'm really trying to present this as professionally as I can the first time so people aren't confused from then on. So what they see the first time will be the tool that they get later. So it was a bit rambling, But if you guys have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Maybe that will help a little bit.
So am I understanding correctly that basically what you have is a catalog of game samples that you can start from, and you can use this tool basically to generate the code for those and then modify those as you need?
Yeah, let me give you a couple of 4 examples. Let's say you're a brand new user, you've never used Corona, and you would like to see an example piece of code. Your options are you can go and download samples, or when this tool is complete, you'd be able to run it and select, say, one of the games that we made in our show here, or one of my templates, and you say, I'd like to see a shooter, some kind of shooter, like asteroids. So you just click on asteroids and click generate, and it will produce an entire project with all of the code in it ready to go, fully functional, which you can then open in an editor and edit, or you can open in the simulator and run, or you could export at that point to Android or iOS, and it would be completely functional. So for a beginning user. Another beginning user kind of option would be, I just want to create an empty frame for me to put my own sample code in, but I don't know how to set it up. I don't know how to program config Lua. I don't know how to do the build settings. And this tool will take you on a questionnaire saying, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to put this on a phone or a tablet? Do you want to have certain features enabled? And at the end of that, it will produce a template or a package. Neither of those is correct. It will produce a project for you that then you can use and add your own code to, and again, export to whatever target device you're looking for. Additionally, let's say you're a middling to advanced user. You might say, I've got my own content, but I really don't want to create my interfaces. I want to get somebody else's sound library, and I need to add some add mob, and I would like to do add flurry to this, but I'm not 100% sure on how to code this stuff up, or I don't know all the steps. This tool will walk you through the steps. It will have external links for training, things like that, and take you through all the steps to basically produce a fully functional app using your code, a menu, perhaps using Composer or another option, and the various plugins that you would have selected. It's a bit hard to describe, so I'm going to be showing this more again in the future.
Okay.
But imagine, if you will, basically a tool that gives you the assistance you need at the level you're at to produce an app. Because I think that Corona already is, it's 10x, the 10x solution or the 100x solution, depending on how you want to look at it. But literally, we're at the point with everything we've got in Corona where you should be able to produce a functional app within 5 minutes. Now, it won't be a final game, but it will be a complete app. And all of the things that are available, like the AdMob plugins, I keep going back to that, or Flurry for keeping track of metrics within your game, or all these other things, they shouldn't be as impenetrable to users as they are. Today, there's this kind of large divide for new users or inexperienced users where they say, I'd really like to use that feature, but it's just a little bit too hard for me to get over the hump. The friction is too great, and then they stop. The purpose of this tool is to take that friction out.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you're working on this. Raj, one of his tenets is that he wants to remove all friction, so that if there's any point where a user is like, they download it and then they're like, now what? Then there should be an answer for that. Or if they, like you said, if they're looking to move to that next phase of development, and there's a friction point there, needs to be removed. Documentation, training materials, sample apps, all that kind of stuff. So.
Right.
So
I mean, this is not by any means a
that.
replacement for what you've got on the site, Corona. What I'm really trying to do here is drive speed of development and ease of development for new users, as well as experienced users. I want it to be something that's useful for the whole gamut of Corona developers that we have.
Is this something, have you considered, and you talked about earlier about the monetization hasn't been fully worked out yet, but have you considered publishing this to the store? Or is this something that somebody could
If the store were available today and this were finished today, I would definitely publish it to the store. That would be one of the simplest routes. Right. But part of this tool, I've worked out a method for downloading content and extending the tool. It's not 100% where I want it to be, but it works. And so I'm also considering the ability to either buy add-ons or to download them directly using some kind of like an in-app purchase. You can buy coins and you can like credits, and then you can choose to use so many credits on certain features. I'm leaning in that direction because it's hard to valueize or give a certain value to each item that marks with a $1 or $2. But if you could split that up a little bit better into something like tokens, 20 tokens to $1, then you might say this is worth 15 tokens or $1.50, that kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
there's a
considering
little bit of a
using,
challenge there to make it as simple as possible for people to understand how to use, right?
Right. Exactly. That's part of why I'm not showing you the interface here, because part of this, I love the word friction, and it's really funny to me that Raj should also use this term and this concept. I'm glad he does, because that means that he and I will connect on that. But the tool itself should not produce friction. So I'm striving to make the interface to this, the concepts that when people run it, they go, oh, that just makes sense. That's what I was looking for. So
Ed, are you saying that when people go through this process, that at the end they'll get a project folder that is their starting point then? And
right. They'll have okay. So they'll work their way through this whole process, and what they could have, if they go through the process and create a full project, is they will have the launch images, they'll have the icons, they will have the properly configured config Lua, the properly set up build settings. They'll have all their keys and codes in for the different plugins they're using. There'll probably be some PDFs and documentation for this is what you need to do next, those kind of steps. Now this would be stuff that would be consistently reused across the project. But in addition to that, there may or may not be a fully functional example. Other things that could be in there would be fully functional menu systems, interfaces, sound libraries. I mean, tools that you might have optionally selected to have added. For example, a great example would be maybe you want to create a project, or you edited a project and you're having a problem. So you go back into this editor, you say, I'd like to regenerate this project, and I want to put in the super meter because I'm having some kind of issue with the frame rate, and I really like to be able to inspect it. And if they've got the super meter in their inventory of tools, it gets added, and then they re-export the project and take a look at it and find the problem. I should mention also, as I'm doing my best to make this the kind of tool where you can generate once, save it, and then if you need to regenerate it in the future, you can do so in a non-destructive manner. So if you've made changes to your project, that you'll be able to export over an existing project without destroying your work.
And then I'm also guessing that it's going to have some kind of generic graphics that would go with that style of game, and then it'll be up to the user to source graphics and deal with that, which would also kind of dovetail into hopefully what the store will help bring, and that is more art that people can use in their games.
Absolutely. So I mentioned menus and such. Let's talk about two different things. One of the major things you put into your game is interfaces, but everybody wants their interface to look a certain way. This will come with a bunch of preset libraries of interface buttons and sliders and whatnot. But SSK already supports the concept of what I call a preset. So people will be able to write preset packs, download them to their tool, and then use that to change the art for their menus. So they could buy somebody's professional content pack, insert it into the toolkit, and then export their project with that to get these nice looking interfaces. Additionally, you alluded to this. Let's say I produce a template, or somebody else produces a template that's for asteroids, my fallback. An asteroids template, but they really would prefer to use their own art or some art that they got somewhere else. The way this will be written is you'll be able to import art and replace art if the template supports it. So my templates will support that kind of thing. And if other people want to put in the extra effort, they can put in more advanced templates, which then will be usable by this kit, and you can replace artwork and sound and stuff like that to make it more of a, not just a generator, but a generator with some extra bonus features to get you further along the path.
Oh, so that's interesting. So you're saying, Ed, that you're going to make it open enough that other people will be able to create their own.
Yeah, initially it's going to be closed so I can control the process. I'll need to keep it closed initially so that I can improve the tool set that I have in this tool itself. So this tool is going to have like specialized libraries to expose making windows and adding buttons and stuff like that, so that it makes it easy for me to code up the examples and the interfaces. But eventually I'll open that up and let other people generate their own content for this using those interfaces. Does that answer your question?
Are you going to make this in?
Yeah.
Are you
so
going
this
to
is written with Corona.
Application?
Sir?
Is this going to be published as a desktop application?
Yeah, this will be a desktop. What you're seeing on the screen is me showing it in the simulator. But this will be a desktop application for OS X and Windows. And the way it'll work is, I'm imagining two different tiers. For advanced users, they may get access to the entire toolkit and the base source code. But as I've said, there's another way to import new functionality, which I've worked out. And so I may let people just use what sort of like a patching system to add additional features. I can't say too much more about that at this point, other than it's a possibility. So it's something I'm struggling with, because ideally I just put the entire source into somebody's hands. That'd be the easiest way to do it, the most professional way. But also it's simpler for the user if they can just download a little patch or a little plugin that just adds features to this tool.
Yeah, I would say you have a subset of users, right? There might be people who are interested in the source code for this project, but I would think that the bulk of the users would just be wanting a desktop application where they could, click some buttons, generate some code, and then open up that code and start working, right? I mean,
that's exactly
what a tool that helps you. Yeah.
Most people, 99% of the people, are going to be getting a finished application for which they'll be able to extend. They'll be able to extend the features easily via downloads or something that they upload from their desktop or whatever. But the app itself will be just like any other app they run on their computer.
Yeah, I know that in the past, I mean, it's great having open source software and being able to look at the code and modify things and make it your own and all that stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there's times when you just want to download the installer and use the darn thing, right? It's great that you know that you can dig in if you want to, but most people probably won't, and they just want to use it. So it seems like if you target that group first, and then worry about the edge case people later.
Yeah, let there be no mistake. This app is not something that people will be downloading the code for. Most people will be getting it as a finished app. They'll just download it, install it on their computer like they would any other app, and run it. Get updates as updates come out, but they're not going to have to mess with code. I mean, any code they mess with will be what they produce as a result of running the tool and generating content or editing content. So I know it'd be better. I hesitated to show this on today's show because I really wanted to show the interface in motion, but because that would have made a lot more sense as I was talking. But I'm in a kind of a hurry. I also want to get my hands on some alpha testers, so I'm making the announcement early, and we can look forward to just quick sneak previews and future hangouts and forums posts.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna just to close this out. I know we're running out of time for me to even do the coding part of this session. I will give you, Charles, a link to the forum post where I'll be requesting alpha and beta testers at the end of the show. So there'll be a link in the show notes that will take you back to the forums where you can sign up as a alpha or a beta tester.
Will do.
Okay, I should get moving then because I'm way behind here. Let me switch screens. Oh, for goodness sake, maybe
And
not.
you're going to provide all the code for this Geometry War stuff too. So if we need to sort of summarize or shortcut, we can always do that, and people can go look at the code on their own time.
Yeah. Actually, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about weapons. But that's what we were supposed to talk about before I did my unveiling here, and we can still do so. In fact, let me just go ahead. We're running the game. You can still see my screen here. What I wanted to talk about today for the game is weapons, and the two kinds of weapons that we have in this game are a cannon for the player, which is this little bugger right here, the yellow dots. And I've got this in debug mode if you're wondering why the enemies aren't moving very quickly. And then, if I can remember the button, it would help if you remember, there it is. And then we've got mines. So at the top of the screen here, you can see the symbol here. I've got one mine left. And when I press the mine button, which is button A on the controller, all of the enemies on the screen are destroyed. So those are the only two weapons that we have in the game. And I wanted to give a quick rundown for people explaining how these weapons work. So let me bring the code over. First of all, let me talk to the mechanics of them, and then we'll look at the code. So if we start the game up, you'll notice that I have, if you had the controller in your hand, you would be able to move the right joystick, and wherever you move the right joystick, your cannon points in that direction and produces a stream of bullets. And these bullets, when they hit enemies, as you would imagine, destroy them. There's not much to it. So basically what we've got here is we've got one joystick which is creating a vector, and then we turn that vector into a velocity vector, and then we create some objects and we give them that velocity. The only difference here is you'll notice that let's see if I can hold still a little bit, that my stream of particles is coming out and they're kind of splitting off from each other. So the way this cannon works, instead of a single stream of particles, you can have 2, 3, 4, 5, as many as you want. I've set it up for 2, and then I'm trying to hold still here. Our cannon is pointing out at where the cursor is here, but what it's doing is adding or subtracting a 5-degree variance so that one stream of bullets is off to the left 5 degrees and the other one is off to the right 5 degrees. In addition, as you'll see in the code, I've added a bit of code here that modulates that a bit. So it randomizes it. If I didn't randomize it, what we'd have is just a stream of particles and it would produce just like a line. But what I wanted was a series of particles that were coming out, or bullets, but they were coming out a little bit randomly, sort of where I was pointing, but with a little jiggle. And what that does is it gives it a little bit more of an organic feel. Let me start this up again. In fact, let me see if I can turn that off for you briefly so you can see the difference. I'll do this on screen so you can see me struggling with my code. Is this right? Oh, no. That is the editor. Can't be showing you that. My apologies. That was a brief preview of the actual editor I was just talking about, the tool. Okay, so where are we? Enemies, common player. Here it is. Random bullet maker. Here it is. So there. I want to run the game, hopefully, if I did that right. Yes, that's not exactly right. Okay, good. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate that, of course. This is what I do. I come into the show, I want to talk about a topic, and then I say, yeah, this would be cool, but I didn't prepare for it, so why don't we go back to what I prepared for? Let's talk about the two concepts that are going on here. So we got a cannon, and we have mines, and they destroy the enemies in two different ways. The cannon particles destroy by using collision. So when a bullet hits an enemy, we have to have some code that says there was a collision, do something about it. Destroy the enemy, make an explosion, a series of particles that come out so we can see that the enemy exploded. Let me restart this. And then when we use our minds, we have to do something different, because among the things we need to do, we need to check to see, do we have any minds? If we do have minds, when the user presses the right button, button A on the controller, we have to listen for that, and then we have to tell all the enemies to do something. And the something we tell them to do is to self-destruct, to give the player some points for destroying each of those enemies, and for the position, at the position of each enemy, we do that little explosion effect. So how do we do that? Let's take a look first at the cannon. So if we take a look at the player maker code, which is under the scripts folder, I've made little notes here for me to find the code today. We want to take a look at the player maker create function, which starts on around line 49. And if we scroll down just a little bit, we are going to see a whole series of settings. Among these settings, you will see we'll see one called fire period, and that stands for, basically, it's telling us is how frequently do we shoot a bullet. So for example, if we made this 1200, that would be saying, let me reload the game, that would be saying only fire a new bullet every 1.2 seconds, which is clearly too slow. So currently in the game it's 120 milliseconds. But I could make it significantly faster. And the reason I'm telling you about these features, besides the fact that I want you to examine the code, is in this game I've only given you one cannon. But we talked about a long time ago the idea of doing upgrades. In the original game, the way this worked is you would play along, and then after you hit a certain level at a certain number of points, your weapon would upgrade and your cannon would start to behave differently. You'd maybe get a wider spread, or the bullets would speed up, or it'd start to fire more bullets per second. And so the way you would achieve that is you would write additional code on top of what I've written here and change these parameters. You would change the fire period, whether or not the first bullet was produced, how many bullets per shot. And so I'm just going to manipulate a couple of these values so people can see them in action. So let's make the fire period twice as fast, so 60 milliseconds. Let's go ahead and say that every time we shoot, that we produce 7 bullets, and we want the first bullet to be produced. So there's this flag here, no first bullet. And what that tells the logic in the bullet maker, which is another module, is it says make 7 bullets, but not really. Make however many bullets you've got here, 7, but skip the first one. And the reason I did that is because sometimes let's say you want to create a cannon that's our original cannon where it only shoots 2 bullets. Well, the easiest way to do this was to calculate the positions for 3 bullets, left, middle, right, but not shoot one of those bullets. So it's just a question, it was the way I wrote the algorithm. So I'll show you what it does with each case and why that makes sense. So let's make this false because I want all of the bullets. And I'll switch it off in a minute so you can see it. Bullet spread. Currently the bullet spread is a 4-degree spread. Let's make it 15 degrees. That's going to be a very wide spread for that many bullets. And then we'll leave the bullet width, height, and colors the same. Now again, if you were to extend this game, what you can do is you could say at some point in the game, be it when we pick an object up or you get a certain number of points, that the parameters here change. So you simply programmatically change these parameters, and as soon as you do that, the player will start to fire bullets in a different way. And so we've made these changes, and I'm going to go ahead and reload, see what it looks like. So now we've amped up. Yes, I'm fully unkillable at this point. Obviously this is overkill, but this is the concept. Very easy, just a few parameters. You can fully change the way your weapons work, or the way the cannon looks and operates. So let's go ahead and tweak some of those parameters again. Let's go ahead and set this back to true. And go ahead and run it. It's going to look goofy, but we'll do it anyways. And then I'll run it with some other parameters so it'll make more sense. So as you can see here, and I need more than 2 hands. We've got a stream of bullets, but we've got a gap right here. This gap is what the algorithm thinks is the position of the first bullet. But it's really not. This is really our first bullet. Most people would agree. They go, oh, the center bullet's the first bullet. Whatever it is, the algorithm has deemed that this is the first location, and so this looks completely wrong. Now let me go back to 2, because this will make complete sense then. Let me go back to 2. Leave our spread at 15, no first bullet. So let me run it, and what we've got, oh, nuggets. Oh, sorry, 3 bullets. Let's go back to 3. Because what I really want to achieve is a stream of 2 bullets. So that's okay, but it's not quite right. I mean, it is right. I only want 2, but with the first bullet missing, I get a stream of 2. So if I wanted all 3 bullets, I could simply go back here and say false. And again, and now we've got a stream of 3.
So are you saying that flag is just in there so that you can split and customize the streams, or is that?
It's simply so I can create a stream that is split down the middle. But I think it's pseudo malfunctioning. You know what I think is really happening here is I think it's cutting off the bullet stream. Because if I could just hold still, I'm going to flip it back to true in a minute. But I think what's happening is we're getting this one and this one, but not this one. What I really intended was the middle one to go away. So let's go ahead and flip that. Reload it. Start it. Oh, wrong. Try to get the same angle. Yeah, so actually I was wrong. It's cutting off the left one. So it's rather arbitrary. But you know what? Until I did this for the demo, I didn't even notice. As I was playing, this was totally workable. The point is you get a split stream, and that's really what I wanted to achieve. It's easily modifiable. If you modify it, in fact, let's do this live. Here's what's going to happen. Just to prove that changing it live works, I'm going to put a timer in here. I can type. Proven time and time again that I cannot. And let's say at 3 seconds, it increments the bullets per shot. Let's do, yeah, bullets per shot. Does that sound right? Yeah. Let's do that. So, function equals 15. Okay, did I type that all right? All right. So when I reload this and I start firing, I'm going to have 2. And at 3 seconds, hopefully, if everything was right, bing! Life goes into a whole new level of destruction. So the point again here is that you can modify the code that exists now to power up your cannon very easily, or to power it back. So let's take a look at the bullet maker just briefly. So this code here is used to control the bullet maker. And let me see it. There is a function field called fireBullet, which then takes the create function from bullet maker, the module, and this is actuated by, well, it's actuated by a bunch of code from above. I don't think we really want to get into this. This is already functional, and if people want to dig into it, that's fine. But let me remind you that this application already works for mobile and for desktop. So it's fully hooked up. And if you want to take a look at the user code or the player creation code, you can find the input code that actuates the firing. But what we really want to look at is the code for creating bullets. And I wanted to zoom in on one piece of this code. So what I did to make this simple is I could have written the bullet creation code as part of the player module, but I knew that later on people might want to extend this to create different kinds of weapons. So in addition to providing you a way to manipulate how this particular weapon works, your other choice is you could add new bullet makers, so like missile makers or whatever, and swap those in onto that hook. So let me take a look here again. So you'll see how, sorry. So down here when I first created the player, I assigned the create function from bullet maker. Another possibility is later on I could add pickups to the game, and let's say pick up a missile icon or run over a missile icon. I could simply change what function this variable points to and have it point to a different builder, and that builder could then create missiles, which would behave completely differently from the maker. So in addition to being able to programmatically change features for the bullet maker, you could swap out the entire piece of code and do something different. However, as a basis for that, you'd want to use the bullet maker code, and the bullet maker code exists in scripts. Bullet maker, sorry, this thing doesn't update the position of the selection. And the important piece of code here starts on line 49. This is a module like all other modules where I localize some functions for speed up. I have some require statements at the top, and then I have a destroy and a create call. The create call is the one that does all of the heavy lifting. First thing it does is called destroy, which does nothing in this case. It's just a placeholder. Some of the things we're doing here is we go ahead and check to, let's see. Yeah, so we make sure that the player is calling this. So the way this bullet maker was generated was, I thought in the future it might be cool to extend this code so that enemies could also shoot. But I wanted to have the option that when enemies were shooting, maybe I changed the color of their bullets or something. So what I did here was I checked and I said, who is calling this function? Is it the player? Oh, if it's the player, I'll do one set of things. But if it's an enemy, maybe I'll do something else. So this may or may not be used in the code. But wherever you see it, it's used to differentiate between a player or an enemy having used this to create the bullet. In our current game, only the player can shoot. So let's see. The shooter is self. Collider. We step down into here. Sorry for my pausing. Okay, so one of the things we have to do is we have to keep track of the last time we fired. So what I do is I create a field on whoever is firing the weapon, and that keeps track of the last time we fired. So initially, we set this up with a value of -1, which means we've never fired before. But if it already exists, we simply assign it back to itself. So at this point, this last fire time will either be -1, or it will be the last time we fired. Then we get the current time. We check to see if the current time, let me make this a little bit bigger so you can read it. We subtract the last time we fired from the current time, and if that is less than or equal to, less than the fire period, for us that was 60 milliseconds the last time I changed it. So if less than 60 milliseconds has gone by, we exit. If more than 60 milliseconds has gone by, then we continue on. Next thing we do is we take the time that we just got, we assign it to the variable saying, okay, that was the last time we fired, now I'm updating it to right now. So right now is when I'm going to fire, and the next time into this function, that will be considered the last time that I fired. And I do air quotes like you can see me on the screen here.
And so is that how we get the gap between bullets? Is that where we're headed?
Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, what we're doing is we're keeping track of the last time we fired, and if not enough time has passed, we do nothing. But if we have exceeded the period, the fire period, the time that must go by before we can fire again, If we've exceeded that time, then this code will drop in and start to execute. So this is like a little short circuit that says, nope, too soon, because you can get, this function will be called every frame, the way it's written in the code now. So every frame is like, what is that, every 33.33 milliseconds? So if our firing period is 60 milliseconds, that means basically every other time this gets called, it should do something, and every other time it should not do something. So it gets called, it fires a bullet. But 33 milliseconds we come in later, that's too soon, don't fire a bullet. Then we come in, it's been 66 milliseconds, okay, that's long enough, fire again. So this is all slaved to our frame rate. Because enter frame, we're using the enter frame listener to call the bullet firing code. And we have two options in Corona, 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. That means this code could execute, if everything's working properly, every 16.66 milliseconds or every 33.33 milliseconds. And so this is how we keep this from being a runaway process and just like continuously firing. Okay, I'm running out of time here, but I'm gonna just give a quick preview of a couple of other bits here. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go ahead and commit this today, and I'll leave this comment as it is, but you want to peek through the code for the parts where I've marked this, and then go back into the player maker. And basically what I'm wanting people to do who are following along is find one of these variables and change it, run the game, see what it does visually, and then peek into the bullet maker and track down that piece of code that uses it, for example, the no first bullet or the bullets per shot, and you'll see how this makes sense. For example, bullets per shot, we start at a certain value and then we count up to that and we just iterate over this code that creates new objects and sends them off. It actually creates the bullets and moves them along, and that's all there is to it.
So basically, for today's talk, we're looking at the weapons being fired, or the cannons being fired from the player. We're looking at the ability to customize those and get different results, and all of that is represented here in the code. So what we see on the screen and say, oh, that's a nice, it has a nice style to it, right? A certain theme to it. That's created all through this code.
Yeah, it's I can't stress enough. It's very easily accessed. I mean, you literally, as the game stands, you don't have to touch the bullet maker code at all. Mm. Everything in the bullet maker is configured by changing parameters on the player. Okay. So if people want to change this game and just keep one cannon, or they want to add multiple cannon effects, they can do that simply by changing the parameters on the player as they go along. For example, if they wanted to make the bullets pink, they would just change the bullet color. Assuming I didn't introduce any bugs, now the bullets are pink. Or if they want to create fat bullets, just change the size, and now they've got fat bullets. Yeah, fat bullets are definitely better. Sorry, snort. Oh, okay, well, we didn't get to the mines at all, and those are done in a completely different way, so I think we'll just have to leave it for now. I'm afraid I talked too much about the other tool.
Let's pick that up definitely next week, because I don't want to rush through it. So
yeah, it'll make more sense if I can draw you along through each step. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and commit this with a couple of markers in here. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, Charles, what I'll do is instead of leaving this generic marker in here, I'll put, what's today's Hangout number?
179.
All right, I'm going to put a marker in the code, Hangout 179. And so people can do like a grep or another search tool and search the code for these markers so they can just find the exact position we were talking about today instead of getting confused. Okay. There's just a couple of bits they need to take a look at for this all to make sense.
Well, and you said that the mine code and the weapons code and all that stuff like that's already in the source code, right? So they can kind of look ahead and kind of jump ahead.
Look ahead. I'll give you one preview. For people who want to look ahead, look for this string right here. purge enemies. The mines are all tied together by a common event called purge enemies. So it won't make that much sense right now, but look for purge enemies and you'll find all the code that's related to mines.
All right, excellent. Well, we're going to have a link to that in the show notes, so you guys check that out. And we have a playlist on the Corona Geek YouTube channel, so youtube.com/CoronaGeek. There's a playlist there that has all the previous shows in it, and so you can follow along if there's something that doesn't make sense in the code. But you know, Ed's documented everything and provided the code for everything, so you shouldn't have a problem. So I just want to remind everybody, go to burtonsmediagroup.com to check out Dr. Burton's books on Corona SDK. Check out roaminggamer.com for templates and tools and other things related to Corona SDK. Crave Creative has a large catalog of games created with Corona that you can check out at cravecreative.com. And as Evolve Studios is always good for just everything. Just go there. It's a great game. You guys are working on. You've published, right, to the console your Ant Militant.
Yeah, the demo is almost ready.
Okay. Yeah, it's not made in Corona, but it is an awesome game.
There is a Steam demo.
Is there? Okay.
That's already available. But.
Yeah, send me a link to that, and I'll link it up in the show notes so people can go check it out. It's a great looking game. And also joining us is Spiral Code Studios, our ever-present Sergey Lerg. So go check out his tips and tutorials and things on Corona at spiralcodestudio.com. So, all right, guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. We'll be back here next Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific. Until then, have a great week and happy coding.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.